All right. Let's get this out of the way first. The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed on Tailboard Talks Firefighter Podcast are solely those of the speakers, guests, and host, and do not in any way represent the thoughts or views or opinions of any other employer, partnership, or sponsor. The material and information in this podcast is for general information purposes only. It should be used at the listener's discretion.
Here comes the intro. Skip forward 30 seconds if you want to get right to the episode. This is the Tailboard Talk Podcast, the best health, wellness, and lifestyle resource for the fire service. We're using stories, lessons, and tips from the front lines to give a realistic view of what the job can do to us and how we can make it out alive. I'm Chris Morella, a firefighter since 03, medic since 05, full-time since 08, and promoted to lieutenant in 20. I'm also a personal trainer and strength coach, and I'm here to give you the best information and host the best discussions to make us capable and durable, both on the job and away from it. So grab a heater, steal some fancy creamer from first shift, and let's go chat. So yeah, man, keep it close-ish. And
Close.
Editing is more difficult now because of the video thing. So I haven't said many swear words because I haven't figured out how to.
You don't have to edit two different things.
Yeah,
It's
too hard. Well, the video part's the real difficult part. I could put out a clean audio recording, then just put out the raw, explicit version of the video. That'd be
Right.
easiest, but I prefer to have them match.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
So editing video is my hamstring right now. Mm-hmm. So we're playing the lowest common denominator of skill.
Yeah.
This guy. So welcome back to the show, dude.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Extremely busy. I appreciate you on this holiday weekend, which you're memorializing with your freedom shirt.
Reppin'.
Yeah, dude.
Reppin' the homeboys.
Which is also a major reason I asked you on today, because we're talking about mentors. And we'll get into that momentarily. But that was, between the Marine Corps life, everybody you've come across, and then working in the fire service, like mentors are no short supply. If you're willing to accept them, if you want them.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of ones that probably shouldn't be modeled after. You know, we had a conversation a little before this about guys that probably shouldn't model your behavior after. But a lot of people do because of the charisma or the appeal or the. We kind of went back to nihilism on it, but different discussion for another day. Unfortunately, this came up because one of the guys that I consider a mentor of mine passed away pretty unexpectedly. Retired a few years ago. He was a guy that I think he played semi-pro, if not pro hockey. Big outdoorsman. Sold me my first mountain bike, my first specialized rock hopper he sold me. It was one of his old ones that he was like, go play with this toy, kid. Took me to Kettle Moraine for my first time. Did a bunch of stuff. We had a commonality of hockey. My ear is still broken because of him. He put me into the boards and my ear hit where the boards meet the glass. Mm-hmm. There's a ledge there, like a 2 or 3 inch ledge.
And your head hit it?
Yeah, he put my head into the boards. He put my head in the boards and it split my ear in half this way, almost like cut it.
Yeah.
Because that's where the corner hit. And it swelled up. And then when it grew back together,
Overlap?
yeah, a little. So I have a seam in my ear from Tim. Great guy. But but he's one of those guys where when I saw the announcement from his department, and then there's hundreds of comments because he was such a genuinely great person. So many of the comments said, man, he was a great firefighter, but even better person. You know, like this is a guy that you wanted to know off shift, not just on shift. And so it first of all, got me thinking, like, how do you call someone a great firefighter? That's such a strange thing to contextualize, right? Like,
Yeah.
good job putting water on the fire. Like, good job directing your crews. Right? It comes down to, I think, decisiveness. I thought a lot about it, but again, it's like a different conversation. But people are investing in the person, right? And then because of who you are as a person, you get considered a great firefighter, mostly because we know that 90+% of the job is not firefighting and EMS calls. It's actually managing people and those relationships you build, right? And so that's why people consider you a great firefighter, is how well you manage yourself, your relationships, conflict, friendships, all that stuff. So it was unexpected. His funeral's Thursday when I go out to that. And but it got me thinking. It got me thinking about mentorship because I haven't talked to him in years. You know, I left that department 16 years ago at this point, and I've seen him two times, I think, since then. But when I think back to that time and I think back to how I operate today, like there's a handful of things that came from that guy. Like that department was my first medic job with contract service, PSI. I was surrounded by full-timers. I was like 20 or 21, I think. I don't remember what age you have to be hired by PSI, but I was just able to be hired just out of medic school. And so I had these guys that were in the union department kind of mentoring me, like showing me how to actually be a person, like an adult for the first time, aside from the part-time department I worked at. But so they carry kind of a special place for me in my formative years of being a fireman.
Well, you just kind of said it too. I mean, it sounds to me like this particular mentor helped set the foundation, right? Because is it safe to say? Because in my mind, you have mentors that shape you in the beginning, and then you have mentors that sharpen you later, right?
Oh yeah.
Like you could be a raw blade, but then you're sharpened by mentors later in life because something has already been set by somebody before that, right? And maybe that same person does both. I don't know, but
yeah. Well, I would definitely say there's more raw and rough stuff to correct at first, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, you're taking that thing that's scattered and rough, and then you're like giving it just a general direction. Mm-hmm. But I will say that department's probably one of the first places. So the part-time department I worked at was very part-time. Good leaders, but it was very individual. A lot of paid on call. There was only 3 full-time lieutenants. So it was like that guy does his thing, no big deal. Everybody kind of went their own way. There was a core group of young guys. We all stuck together, but as you got through the ranks, it was just generational differences, and everybody kind of did their own thing. When I went to the contract medic job, I went to that department. It was the first time, I think, thinking back on it now, the first time I think I saw like real conflict within the ranks and like real adult discussions being had amongst same rank lieutenants or commanders, they called them, or whatever, of like, no, you're wrong, and I'm going to tell you why you're wrong, and this is my department. And the other guy like, no, this is my department, and I'm going to tell you why you're wrong. Like that whole thing was new to me. So seeing that, and then how to handle that, as opposed to how I was used to handling it in the hockey world 2 years earlier, how to handle stuff like an adult and tell someone they're wrong and be confident enough to tell someone they're wrong and back it up. That was big time. And then you get guys that, it was one of the first times where someone would pull me aside and be like, don't follow that guy. Like that guy's got his thing going on. Don't be like him.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of what this guy did. Like you would go to him as a sounding board of like, what do you think? And he would give you his opinion on it and like what he thought was not just the right thing to do, but what the right thing is, like what the right thing to do globally is as a human, not just like what Tim would do. And a lot of it was old school. A lot of it was like you pull that guy aside and you chew his head off for 15 minutes, and that's as far as it goes, but you teach him a lesson that way. Mm-hmm. And I think that's
how old was Tim when he was a mentor for you at that time?
Oh man, 40s.
Okay.
Mid 40s probably. I would guess.
So he's already, to you, an older guy.
Oh yeah, he was one of the he was in the upper third of the leadership there for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a lieutenant going for the next step in the next few years, I believe. But even just his personality would make him that senior guy. Like you have the guys that, regardless of their age, guys are like, guys, just he's the guy. Like,
yeah,
he's the dude, right? So all that he said, I'm no unique story in his life. That's the way he was, right? And we work with guys like that now. So going back to now, I posed that question on Instagram just quickly yesterday, like, tell me about your mentors. And that's part of the reason I had you on, Joe, is because you got a bunch. But here's some of the responses. One pushed me into the fire service, and one was the reason I applied to my department. Another one was they always had the hard conversations with me, which I will forever appreciate. This one's from Nate Palin, who is a monster in the strength and conditioning world, former Ranger. He says, he gave me his time before I'd earned his time, which, well, like, typical Nate Palin comment, says paragraphs in half a sentence.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's pretty profound.
Yeah. They come from any and every walk of life, don't just have to be fire service mentors to be the best firefighter. And I think best firefighter mentor was the end of that sentence, but the box cut it off. And then I was always the underdog, and they never denied me help of instruction. They push you when you need it. I think that speaks to the person receiving help as much as the person recognizing that this person is worth putting their time into. And then going back to Nate Palin's gave me his time before I'd earned his time, is like, they must see something in you that tells you that their time is of value to you, and vice versa for me to invest this in you, right? That there's certainly people that you and I have come across that are just non-starters. When you're like, I can see that this isn't going to give me the fruit for anybody. I'm not gonna water this plant.
Right.
Like, and that's just an unfortunate reality of some of the relationships we have with people, right?
For sure.
So I looked up the definition of mentor, and it's very simple: an experienced and trusted advisor, and that's it. But what I want to kind of kick this off with, so many minutes in, 12 minutes in, is kind of what comes to mind first when I asked you to be on an episode about mentors and that whole thing. Where did you start with it? Because I feel like wherever you start is probably the most impactful and the most strong feelings you have about it, because it references you to a person or a time or something that was like largely pivotal. And then from that, it kind of goes down in terms of intensity in your formation, right? So
yeah, I think for me, when you brought it up first, I did kind of just scan through my head, and I'm like, sometimes you don't know you have a mentor until you have already gone so far down that road, right? And I just got to thinking back in time. I'm like, well, who was that mentor to me in different phases of my life? And I think that when I look back, the first one that had a huge pivot to me mentally was my grandfather. I was on probation working on a Thanksgiving, and I'm calling from the firehouse to say hello to my family on Thanksgiving. I called my dad, and he's like, let me pass you around the room. And growing up, we always went to Oakland where my grandparents lived, and all the cousins and aunts and uncles, everybody got together. And that's what Thanksgiving or Christmas or Easter or where all these holidays were, right? Big family, big get together. It was just a special time. And here I was, thousands of miles away, starting a new life in a foreign place, right? Like, we have no family in Illinois. We'd only lived here a year. And, the job at that point, you just can't get the time off and just fly home for any reason. Anyway, they're passing the phone around, and my grandfather gets on the phone, and I apologized. I said, I'm so sorry I can't be there right now. Breaks my heart, And he said something to me in that moment, and I didn't really understand it in that moment, but it was so profound that it came up in my best man speech at my brother's wedding. It came up in various other occasions in my life. And it was, he was an immigrant from Italy, and he had to start a whole new family in a foreign land. And he basically just conveyed to me this message of, this is your time to start your family. And we'll always be here for you. And you never have to worry about showing up. You show up when you can, but now they need you there. And we didn't have kids at the time, so it was just me and Cam. And I just thought to myself, like, wow, like, he's basically giving me permission to be me. And I didn't understand it at the time how much it would shape me, but it really allowed me to stop being a Californian who lived in Illinois, right? Rather than an Illinoisan who grew up in California, right? And it was so powerful that I just was able to pivot my mindset and say, this is who I am, this is where I live now. And I think that was like the foundational one. That was like and then I was probably 24, 25 years old. So it took that long for me to get a hard hitting smack in the face from my own grandfather, and then later in my career, I realized, kind of like I said earlier about, I've been going down a certain path, and I've had people sharpen me, and I think about the people that have done that, Matt Olson comes to mind, freshly retired vice president, starting a new life in Florida, again, kind of like what I did in from California to here. He's doing Illinois his whole life, moving down to Florida for his last phase of his life,
Still a union member too. I saw that.
Yeah. Joined the Teamsters, right. Yeah. He joined the Teamsters, true to his union roots. But, with Matt, I think I didn't really understand he was a mentor until I was already down a certain path, He had been helping me over and over before I was ever a president. And then when I got sworn into president, he called me within an hour and said, "You ready?" And I said, "What the heck am I doing, man?" It was a little bit of imposter syndrome, I think.
Yeah.
And he said, "Don't worry. None of us were seeking this. We all fall into it, and you're here for a reason. So just enjoy the ride and do the best you can." So I called him all the time, and he walked me through a lot of things until the point where he's like, "You know the answer to these things." You know, he's like, "You're calling me for some sort of confirmation bias."
Validation.
Yeah, some validation, right? And he goes, "Do what you know is right, and you know you'll be okay with those decisions, even if they're not the right ones at that moment." And that's what really kind of, I think, made me realize that he had become a mentor before I ever sought him as a mentor, right?
Yeah.
You know.
Have you ever approached anyone and said like, "Hey, can we start a thing where like I run stuff by you?" And have you ever outwardly approached someone? Because I have. When I got promoted, I had guys that I worked with, both my rank and above, who never really had that formal structure with. And then as things started coming up and personnel issues started coming up, I went to one guy. I was like, "Hey, I need someone I can run stuff by, not outside of the chain. I understand there's some responsibility there still. Like at a certain level, you're going to pinch it and we're going to do something about it. But I need like a sounding board from an experienced person." And before then, we never really had that experience. But I saw them as someone that I wanted. I saw them as someone that I liked the way they handled things. I thought it was fair, and it wasn't overly fisty brotherhood, right? It wasn't like zero fault. It certainly wasn't that, but it was balanced. And I thought if I could get my decision making to that balanced way this guy has it, I think I'll be in a good spot. And so I sought him out and said, I'm having these things pop up and I need some guidance. Are you willing to let me run stuff by you and not elevate it immediately? Like, give me the opportunity to do it. But tell me when I need to elevate this and tell me when I'm overreacting and stuff like that. And I've done it now, I think 2 or 3 times with that person. I don't use it frivolously. It's usually significant events, you know. And it's 3 times, but I think it's pretty well split of him being like, "No, this is actionable. Like, you got to do your job here." And then, just document it and move on. Like, this is, sometimes these things happen, you know.
Yeah.
I see more of the mentorships happening organically like that, because there's like yours with Matt calling you up and be like, "Hey, I'm your guy," whether you know it or not. But I think there's value too if someone came to you and said like, "Hey, I need a guy." Like, so have you ever done that as a person who sought that out, or has anybody done that to you?
I don't really know if somebody's done it to me. I don't know of somebody actually asking that question. I was just about to ask you how you sought that. I mean, what in that person did you see? Like, that was my question. I was curious to that. But to answer your question first, I think I subconsciously did that with when I came on with a larger group of guys in the academy, and I had 0 fire service experience at all. You know, not even an EMT. But I came on with a couple of guys, Coop and Bradshaw, being 2 of them. And my whole class was a bunch of great guys. I love them all. But those 2 in particular, there was something about them, like they came with experience. One from Algonquin, one from Wheaton. And they didn't have arrogance about it, but they knew so much already. Like, the academy was like a refresher course for a lot of them. And they basically just kind of kept saying, like, "I see you as an, wide-eyed, inexperienced blob. Yeah. But here, let me show you some tricks." And, so I quickly just was magnetized by their personalities and their ability to lower that guard and they weren't there to step on me and show me that, like, "Hey, they're not dimming my bulb to make them look brighter," especially in an academy setting, right? They were there to help me shine. And I'll tell you that was another lasting impact. But it made me, to this day, I'm lucky enough to be relieved by one of them every morning. And I still, like, pick up things from him. You know what I mean? And he's on the way out. And but
Sure, hey, sure he is.
I didn't. Yeah, right.
Sure.
He says it over and
Yeah,
over, right? But I didn't specifically go up to them and say, "Hey, can I follow you?" But because of their behaviors and because of their personality, and let me just basically say they checked their ego at the door, and there was no type A-ness about them, I was drawn to them. And I sought them out, whether I was asking for it or not. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it was a safe place
Yeah.
for me to foster my education, and I was also extremely motivated, so it never squashed that.
Yeah.
They basically harnessed it and put it in the right direction. So,
Yeah,
I was going to ask you though, when you asked that question to that specific lieutenant, was there a certain characteristic or quality that you saw in that person that you were drawn to? Was
Yeah.
it something that you wanted to be in that person?
It was something that I saw the way now lieutenant. So that's the tricky part.
Oh,
Right? Someone above lieutenant. And I saw the way that they handled people, like in a very harsh way of saying it. And it was different from the way I handle people. And I thought they got the same result I would have gotten. Plus the person agreed with them more and didn't just do it out of compliance. And it's a type of management style where, they're not coercing anybody. Like, I'm trying to think of a way that they persuade someone to basically they reframe the same issue they're having back at them with an alternate ending. And the person, because of the way it's presented, has no choice but to agree with that alternate ending, which is the way that person thinks it should be going. So they'll say like, yeah, but really you could see how instead of doing that, this is probably a better option, right? And the person will be like, yeah. And then you can go into that a little bit, but usually that's all the person had to do was open the door to this other way of thinking that was equally as palatable to the person with the issue. And I saw that, I was like, this is a better way for me to do some things. The other thing was that they spoke and reacted very slowly to things, which I don't do very well at all. Like, I usually try to my mind usually tries to beat the words out of my mouth. Like, I try to overtalk my brain a lot, as I'm doing right now. This person would sit there and let the room spin for a little bit, and the whole time keep tabs on it. But he's formulating a response to the first thing that was said, and he's going to bring it back to that and address the root of this entire thing that's spinning the room out of control. But it would take 10 minutes, which is an unconscionable amount of time for me.
right.
It would take 20 minutes. He'd bring it back around, and then by that time the room is done spinning, and he can bring back to the original point of this thing, and then it gets sorted out. It was just very impressive.
Yeah.
It's something that comes naturally, I think. I think he's got it in him to communicate like that. I don't think it's a taught thing. But as I've written down here, that's the beauty of a mentorship, is that maybe something he grabbed onto as a brand new acting officer from a guy who got it from the guy before and the guy before, right?
Yeah.
And he saw that as like, this is the good way to do it. Like,
Yeah.
Watch me tie this person in the knots for you calmly and go on my way, right?
Right.
And in the end, everybody loves you because you're not confronting anyone. You're not belittling anyone's ideas. You're agreeing that, yeah, the way you're reacting is for sure a way to do it. Here's path B, which is we'll get you the same result, but we'll all be friends at the end. And
Right.
we don't have to have more meetings about this thing. So that was it. Now, I also have other sounding boards I bounce stuff off of who I know are highly emotional because I want to see how emotional they react so I know what not to do. Because I know that's not the right reaction, and I'll say like, hey, this happened the other day. What do you think? And fireworks immediately. And I'll be like, good. I know that's what I was feeling too, so now I know I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And then I'll start playing devil's advocate against my own argument to that person, and eventually that'll calm. They'll be like, I guess there's more to it. And I'll be like, yeah, so that's the path I took too. And
Right.
we both get something out of that. That's a more
synergistic relationship you have with somebody
yeah.
that you both are benefiting from in a way, right?
Oh yeah, and I think those people
Symbiotic, I guess, is the word.
Those people, I would say, the two people I have that I do that with are within a year of promotion of me, one before, one after, and so that's a kind of a indicator, right?
Yeah.
How we grow and mature over this thing. Mm-hmm. But I got both sides of the spectrum, and then I got like Kurt. Kurt is a senior firefighter and engineer. I got his opinion from like the all-seeing eye of the engineer, right?
Right.
Like I would use you as an opinion because not only do you have the union experience, you have the state experience, you have the fire department experience. I know the peripherally the personalities you came up with, who are a smattering of different personalities, right? And you've been able to observe those the whole time. And a lot of the stuff we see now has happened before. A lot of the stuff we see now, you might have seen when you were on probation or like your first couple of years, and it's the players are the same but different. The situations are the same but different. the outcomes are the same but different, right? And so using someone who's seen it before is like, yeah, you can stumble through, or you can just look at this roadmap that we know how to deal with this, right?
Yeah.
I dealt with this. It's a different person, but the same person. Here's how I dealt with it.
100%.
So long story short, and to answer or not answer your question, it was just more stuff that I saw as valuable, and I knew that they were consistent with that, and that's how they did stuff. And I was like, I need that balance. I need that part of it to chime in. It's not going to be my primary personality, but that's another round in the chamber when I need it, right? That's another look at something that's valuable. So
that's a great point. You made me think about something that I didn't previously think about, but and I really don't know if this falls under the category of mentor, other than the fact that you hold somebody in such high regard or respect them so much that you need them in order for you to make a coherent or logical or even wise decision, right? The VP that recently took a leave of absence, let's say, also our Firefighter of the Year, looking to be back to back. By the way,
I've seen the buttons.
He's on this campaign.
Seen the buttons and the stickers. Yeah, I got it. Yeah.
And he'll get it. He's going to be the first.
So just so you know, when I was in the academy, Carl was the valedictorian by a long shot, right?
Yeah.
Schuin, he was also like 50 years old or something.
Right.
Knew everything. Probably taught it back east or something like that, right? So when it came time to vote, like who was the valedictorian or leader of the class or whatever, there was the Carl campaign, and then there was the anybody but Carl campaign, and I was the head of that campaign. So I made signs, anybody but Carl. I didn't care who it was.
That's
not
awesome.
Me, but anybody but Carl.
Right.
I ran that campaign. So I'm getting geared up.
Yeah.
The wheels are moving for the anti-Josh Smith campaign.
Yeah.
Anybody
but Josh.
Yeah.
I might actually jump on that one.
The buttons are easily modifiable. Vote for Josh. Like, just don't.
Yeah.
Don't vote for Josh.
I like to tell people all the time when people like give him flowers, props for anything that he's done, which is a lot. I like to say, isn't he a jerk? Doesn't that guy suck?
Yeah.
Just remind people
Yes.
The ever optimist.
All glory is fleeting.
But to my point though, I never knew I needed somebody like that.
Oh yeah.
So badly until about 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020. For the last 6 years, I've always had people in my life that have been close to me, and I'll ask them their opinion, and they give me some good advice, and sometimes it's just kind of like the advice that they give at the time. It wasn't until I realized that every single decision I was making went through him first, because he had the same emotions I had tied to things, but he had a way of taking a breath that I didn't. Like sometimes if something didn't go our way with the city, or something didn't go our way with the department, or whatever was going on at that time, and there was a lot, I would build up such anger, inside, and I would just think about all the different things, and I would type away all the expletives, and then use a good tip that I got before: delete 3 times, rewrite, delete 3 times, and then start over. But then I would give that final copy to Josh, who would scratch everything and say, "Hey, I hear you. I know what you're saying. Here's a better way to say it." And then I could go talk to city council, and then I could go do these things. And it wasn't a crutch. It was more or less like I knew that I was going to be the best version of myself if I went through him first.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I wouldn't consider it a crutch at all. I think it's an asset. I mean, that's...
It was an asset.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I knew that if I went through that path, I came out better. Yeah. As if I just said, well, I know it's there, so I'm going to skip it and go this way. It was going to be a rougher path.
Same but different topic. We've had the conversation, too, of times that you as a union president have had to say, you've had to make a hard line of separation between what Joe Galli likes, wants, and would like to say, and what the membership can, needs, and wants to hear, and what the message from the union must be.
Right.
And you can't do that without a cabinet. You can't possibly do that without a balanced cabinet of people who are on all sides of the spectrum and ready to chip in and make that well-rounded message something that you can look back on years from now and be like, it's not how I was feeling. It's not what I still want to say, but that's definitely the message that should be out there for the good of the whole.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, I don't want to get too off topic because that's another can of worms.
Yeah,
I see you thinking on it already, right? I want to bring up something that when I was thinking about mentorship, I kind of thought of two different forms of mentorship. I think the second way is more prolific now because of social media and just how small the world is. There's traditional membership, one-on-one. I asked Joe Galli, like, hey, I'm a shop steward, which I'm not. I'm a shop steward. I'd like you to mentor me in the ways of the union so I can be smart, right? The other way is something I think, like I said, is more available now, is like an indirect or purely observational mentee role. You can model yourself after Abraham Lincoln. You can watch Jocko videos online and be like, I'm going to learn how to be a man from Jocko, right? You can never, ever, ever meet the person or ever have a conversation with them and consider them your mentor because of the amount of stuff they're putting out there, right? Where I see a problem with that is that people tie their personality to it and they adopt that as who they are, not a source of learning and information from, right? Have you seen or have you kind of latched on anybody in that remote role that you constantly check in with? You're like, I like what they're doing, the decisions they make, the way they handle themselves. I'm going to continue to try to take cues from that and model my behavior, or at least have that as my mental cabinet up there of like, what would Jocko do right now? And that's one of the question on top of question. That's one of the differences I put in here was if you're using a direct one-to-one mentorship, you would go to Olson and say, what should I do, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of times with the remote ones, you're forced to say, what would I do if I had the same problem as that person? And then you mirror that against, or you compare that against what they did, and you see how off base you are to your ideal, or if you're in line with it, or what you could adjust and what outcome they got, and see if maybe I'm not so in line with this person, or maybe I need to be more like this person in the way they handle stuff, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think what's unique is that I check in with those mentors, those not one-on-one per se, but like in different aspects of what I'm doing, right? As an engineer, before I was just a young firefighter, there were some things that occurred on the job that put retired engineer Tom Lapino kind of on a pedestal. And I got to see, there was a lot of stories around Tom Lapino that I just had heard. And then we had a particular fire when I was pretty new on the job where he was my engineer on overtime. It was a fatality, unfortunately, but it was one of those, it was kind of, I wouldn't call it a vendor search, but it was very similar. I mean, we knew there was a victim and we were all alone, and we went right through the balcony and searched for this guy. And what Tom had done in a very short amount of time, that just me getting my mask on as a new firefighter, just blew my mind. And I was like, this guy is legit. You know what I mean? But because he cared, if you saw Tom in the firehouse, he was usually on his iPad, he was usually very relaxed, very calm, almost pulseless, you know what I mean? But when you saw him, when the alarm went off, fewer people were a bigger pro than Tom Lapino.
Yeah.
And I just always would frame my job in that kind of context. You know what I mean? Like, there are engineers like that just know their streets, Yeah. You know who I'm talking about. There are engineers like Randy Lenhart who are just all around something that just like, you know what I mean? They kept control of the crew, no matter who the officer was or you know what I mean? There was just like a balancing thing.
Yeah.
So it was that pride and craft that I always wanted to say, like, I want to be the best engineer that I can be. So I'm going to use these people as my mentors, from afar. Even if I didn't go directly to them, I was always checking myself against the best things about those people, right? Same thing with union stuff. I mean, whether it's former AFFI President Pat Devaney or Matt Olson or these guys, I'd either go right to there, or I would think about how would they handle this situation. You know, if the city's coming at us on this angle, how do I step back and handle it like the pros that they are? Yeah. You know what I mean? Am I going to do it the same way? Absolutely not. You know what I mean? No matter how much you try to, right?
Yeah.
I think you kind of touched on that a little bit, because you can't mimic somebody and get the same result. Right. You know, it's like grandma having a cookie recipe. She can give you the recipe. It's not going to taste the same,
right?
Because she's got her style, right? It's the same thing. You can look at the ingredients, you can have the recipe from them, but you're going to bake it a different way. And, yeah. So I think it's just from different angle. I don't even know if I answered your question, but I'm just.
Yeah, you did, because it's one of those things where it's the beauty of the mentorship is you take, when I sent you the kind of the rough skeleton of this thing, you put it wonderfully, and you said you couldn't explain it, but you said it's just the distillation of knowledge and experience that you want to have and then pass on to the next generation, you know. And I think that that's something that I have it down here, is it's titled as The Great Tragedy, is that we get guys who, through whatever reason or method or road they took to get there, they either refuse to participate in a mentorship, either passively or actively, or they refuse to recognize that with 25 years on, you know, you are an asset. And yeah, you had your rough time 15, 20 years ago, 7 years ago, 2 years ago. People made you angry, you got scorned or whatever. But there's a smaller universe to pay attention to inside your crew and your station. And if nothing else, there's always guys that are contributing behind the scenes. You know, there's guys that will send you or the shop steward messages and be like, hey, can I help you look at this stuff? You know, or can I help you do this stuff? But I think one of the greatest tragedies is someone disconnecting so harshly that they take their knowledge with them and they take their lessons with them. Even if it's lessons of like, here's how I screwed myself over 5 or 6 times in the past 10 years. And this is why the administration doesn't love me so much. To have the self-awareness to know those things and at least use them to steer someone away from that and not just be like adversarial with everything and now everybody sucks. You know, I think that takes a big brain and big personality, but one of the greatest tragedies I see is guys just kind of fading and drawing the line and disconnecting, you know?
Yeah, you framed that great, because as you were saying that, I was like, that is tragic. You know what I mean? It's so true, because you cannot make the place better than you found it if you're keeping that information from other people, you know? There's a difference too, don't you think, between passing on only the history of the bad, right? I've gone round and round in meetings with leadership in our department about, you know, guys keep bringing up the past, and it drives them crazy. And I understand why. It's important for guys to understand the past, or at least know that this was a thing. But it's also important, to his point, if there's truth to both sides, is that you need to also show that not only was this awful the way it was, you know, the years of fighting, and it doesn't matter whose fault it was, who threw the first stone, but here's how we got better. You know, these are the things that we're doing today. So remember, it was this way, but it's not that way because of the things we're doing now. Yeah. And if you can't promote the harmony, you'll doom yourself to that previous tragedy, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and that's a much harder thing to do, because I think when you said it doesn't matter who threw the first stone, by admitting that it's better and you didn't have anything, I shouldn't say anything to do with it, by admitting that it's better now, and that individual may have not taken any active role in it, you're essentially giving credit to the other side of making it better, which can be very difficult to stomach, right?
Right.
Because in your mind, it's a safe argument to make that this place sucks because it's never going to change, and it's a safe argument to make, and I'm not going to be wrong, so I might as well just take the easy path and do it. Mm-hmm. But if it does get proven wrong, you know, once in a generation it gets proven wrong, and you don't recognize that, or you can't recognize that because you think that gives credit to the other side, then you're stifling 100%. Whatever progress is available, right?
100%.
And we don't need much, dude. I've been telling the new guys probably for about the past 6 years 6 or 7 years, because Kurt and I get them on their first hour of their first day, right, for the fitness stuff. And then we have them every first hour for 2 weeks. I've been telling them for about that long that like this, we're going to hire, at the time we were projecting, we're going to hire a third of the department in the next 10 years. And stuff happened 10 years ago, stuff happened 5 years ago. I had conversations 3 years ago that I'm not proud of with people. I said, but in 5 years, this will be your department. You will be the vast majority of this department. So whatever stories you're going to hear and whatever things you're going to experience and opinions you run across, those things happened for sure. But those happened to those people. And you had no involvement in it, and you have no onus to it. What you have to do is take this department and make it the way you want it, and make sure that the people hired after you are following your example. I said, because you're going to hear it. You're going to hear it on day one. Right. As soon as Kurt and I leave this room, you're going to start hearing it.
Yeah.
And just know that that's not your problem, and that fight has been fought. And your job is to be who you are and make this place a good place. And but then they get released to the hounds, right?
That's
or
right.
Released to the wolves, and
That's
it's
right.
like, whew, good luck remembering that in 2 hours when you have to learn 12 more people's names. Mm-hmm. But it's true, man. It's every set of people we hire is a new opportunity to not put us backwards.
Yes.
And I guess this ties back, to the mentorship side of, we can do like a call to action or a wrap up. But if I was going to tell the new members and the new hires and new people in the fire service, first of all, I would say don't be hesitant to accept advice and help, and accept mentorship if someone's willing to give it to you. Most likely the people that are willing to give it to you are the people that should be doing it, and the general membership wants them to be doing it, right? They've gotten that confidence in doing it because they've been told they're good at it or shown they're being good at it. But the second part is I wouldn't be hesitant to go out and ask for a mentor too. I think that's an uncomfortable part of it, but I think there's a lot less communication now, just between generations and between ranks. And I think it's going to be uncomfortable, but if a new guy came up to me and said, hey, I need you to help me through my first year, or I'm getting off probation soon and I'm still shaky, I need some help, I would be so much more, I would look on that person so much more positively than if they just said, well, I guess I'll figure this out, and whatever the next crew brings me, I'll figure that out too.
Right.
But it's uncomfortable and it's tough. And unfortunately, like we were saying, the senior third of the department now was involved in all that terrible stuff. And I think a lot of them are just like, 5 years left, man. Let's just run this clock out. And not to say they're withdrawn or they're inactive or anything like that, but
not like they used to be.
They're tired, man.
Right.
They're tired. I should say that they're tired. And they'll appreciate it too. I think asking someone to mentor you or be your source is a way to re-engage them and prove to them, or at least say to them directly without saying that, like, hey, I think you have a lot of value. Like, can you give me some of that value? Like, you have value to me. The administration might hate you, and you might say the station sucks, and you want to be fishing, but you can be valuable to me if you want, And
Right.
I think that would go a long way, but it's uncomfortable. So
It is. And I think you said something in there that made me realize too that a common denominator with some of the best mentors that we've seen, I believe, on our department are the ones that empower us, right? Whether I go to somebody directly and say, hey, I need somebody to help me through this, or I just found out that they were a mentor because I'm looking back on the tracks that were laid.
yeah.
I realized that I was empowered by them, right? They weren't that crutch like I was talking about before. Like, I was still left to make my own decisions, and I was still left to put my effort into it and then make something out of it. And I think those are the people that stand out the most, are the ones that empower the next generation, because you said it. I mean, and it's already happened, by the way. A third of our department is under 5 years.
Yeah.
And we're still hiring. So, like, conceivably, we're gonna have a 2/3 majority that have 15 or less, right? Like, it's just gonna be
Yeah, in 10 years we'll be under 20 years.
right. Yeah, and it's amazing to think about. But I think I think about, like, all the things, like, how would I want to be treated if I were in that young, growing majority, right? They're a minority per se, but it's the largest percentage we've had in a long time.
Yeah.
It's time for them to feel empowered, and they need mentors that can empower them because they got to make decisions, for the best.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you're talking, I'm thinking like Dan, him and his coaching stuff.
Yeah.
I did it when he was going through his certification for that. I did a few phone calls with him, and it was that entire premise from what little I know about it is all about just empowering the individual to answer their own questions. Like, hey, what do you want to do? Well, I want to start a podcast. Like, okay, so what things do you need to start a podcast? And you go off I need a recorder and a microphone and this and that. Okay, can you just like buy those things, or like it's just leading you to your own answers and your own fate, right?
His name went through my head a dozen times throughout this entire episode because of what you just said. That is his style, empowerment.
Right.
When he was my engine officer, and I was just a back end guy, I always showed up. I was always the first one in, right, and put my stuff on the rig, and then do my walks, and then do my checks, and then I would go grab my first cup of coffee. And as I'm chatting to people, Dan would open the door, because he was usually the next one in, and say, I moved your stuff to the front. I didn't ask to act the front seat of the engine. Right. He just was always like, I'm going to let you do this today, and you're going to learn this job, and you're going to, he was always pushing me to do better. But quickly we would run, automatic alarms at full stills or whatever, and he would pull the tapes from dispatch, and we would listen. And he would say, what do you hear? And I would say, I hear a panicked idiot, or I hear, I hear this or I hear that. And he's like, what else do you hear? And I would tell him. And pretty soon it turned into like, all right, what did you do really well? And I would say, well, I think I did this well. And then he'd say, what did you not do so well? And I would say, I list it. But quickly it became, I was having a tougher time making the list very long on the things that I needed to improve upon, because he was empowering me to keep trying and listen to myself. And you know what I mean? Like, I'm listening to these tapes and I was giving myself an honest evaluation, and he was empowering me that entire time to be better, and make those decisions. And that's just who he is. Like you just described, like, well, what do you need? Well, what did you do well? I mean, like, the answers. Right. And he knows that you can find the answers. So let's look, and there's a genuine lack of ego in that, right? Like, he's not there to say like, let me show you what you did wrong, right, or let me show you how you can be better.
Listen to me give an example of a size.
Exactly. Right. And that's what makes him such a powerful mentor, because he's making you feel like, oh, you know what? I've got this confidence in myself. He's showing you this level of confidence that maybe you have, or you're just afraid to let out.
Yeah.
And he just says, let it out. Yeah. And are you going to slip and fall? Yeah. But we'll be here to help you back up, because we don't fall alone. There's just a genuine, you can always read the genuine characteristics in humans, and that's one of his most genuine traits for sure.
Yeah. When you were saying that, I thought back to my time with Hop as an acting officer, and Hop was the engine officer, and there was just an era of like, one of the things I say when we're playing hockey, if I'm playing with like someone who's newer or just nervous, or if it's a mixed bag of skaters out there and it's like, they're just not feeling comfortable, and inevitably we'll go down on a player, like a 2-on-1 or something like that, and the pass will get fumbled, or the shot will be bad, or something will happen. And the instant reaction is like, apologize. Hockey's it's like a Minnesota level of apology going on. Like, I'm sorry, man, I blew it, or I bonked it, or I jammed you, or something like that. And I always tell them, like, dude, we're going to get so many more chances to shoot today. Like, that, we're going to have 50 more chances. Don't worry about it. Like, we're going to get a ton of time on the ice today. And that's how I felt with, like, Hopper and with Dan, is like, we're going to get a ton of chances to do this, dude. This isn't the chance. Like, this is one of 1,000. Don't worry about it. Like, we're going to have a lot more opportunity to kick ass today. And it's just that feeling of security you have to, like, okay, I know I can bonk one. And not only is he there to pick up the pieces, because he's got the experience too, but I can probably bonk it a couple times. As long as it's not a dire issue, I understand that I'm learning, and so does he, and we're good. And it's a a valuable trait, a valuable security to have, that peace of mind that you can screw up to an extent and
Right.
and be okay.
Well, that's where we learn too, right?
Yeah.
We learn from the mistakes mostly.
Oh yeah.
Those are the ones where we get the eye opening and we're like, oh man, if I could do that all over again, right? And the next time you're confronted with that problem, you remember that, oh, I don't want to go down that path again. But there's a level of comfort that envelops the anxiety that's there when you're making those decisions for the first time. That a guy like the people that you're mentioning, they provide that level of comfort over that blanket of comfort on that anxiety, to say like, hey, make the decision. Nobody's going to die because I'm standing right here. But if you screw up, we're going to learn from it. And that's a big deal, especially from the mentor side. I mean, you don't go back to the people that just watch you fail, right?
Right. No, I avoid them now. There's been a few.
Yeah, they're out there.
Where afterwards they'll tell me like, dude, you blew that on a call or whatever. Like, what were you thinking? I'll be like, you were right next to me.
Right.
Like, if I'm doing that poorly, tell me. They're like, well, you got to let you make your own mistakes and then we'll figure it out. I'm like, no, you're describing a mistake that should not have happened.
Right.
Like, this is a preventable.
Yeah.
Or that I don't need on my brain. So help me out.
And you know what? That actually brings up another great point, not to belabor this issue, but like, I think a real good mentor doesn't give up on people too.
Yeah.
Prior to Josh coming to my crew, my previous engine officer who, you and Kate had talked about at her first fire,
Yeah.
Everybody knows this guy is a complete character,
Yeah.
definitely can be polarizing in certain aspects, but I think he's fairly beloved.
Yeah.
But when we got a new guy, this particular guy had a rough start. I mean, to put it bluntly, he had a rough start.
I had a lot of phone calls. Yeah. I had a lot of meetings.
Tons of meetings. And I never thought in my mind, like, this guy can't hack it.
Right.
It seemed at the time like this guy's got to just like unlock it. There's something that needs to be unlocked.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, it wasn't getting unlocked. And that's not the point. The point is, though, is that I never saw somebody as crass and as rough edged as this lieutenant can be. We were out till sometimes at 9 p.m. at Station 2 at the training tower on a roof simulator, cutting a hole, going over and over and over again. I've never seen that. I've never seen such like devotion to trying to get a guy through something. In the end, he had to get moved to a different lieutenant, and it worked. Yeah. Sometimes that's oil and water for whatever reason. But when I saw that, I was like, this is the side of this guy that most people don't see.
Oh, dude.
And if despite all of those other, his, little bit rough around. I'm trying to be, I know you don't want to have to delete a lot of swear words. So
he's aware of it,
but yeah,
he knows.
He knows, but nobody knows more than he does.
Yeah.
But the point is, though, is that like, that is a characteristic I wish we all possessed.
Yeah.
If every single one of us, because there are people that will just turn their back and say, well, I tried. Screw you. You know what? It's just, maybe this place isn't for you. He looked at it from, well, as long as you're with me, I'm going to put everything into you. One time I woke up in the morning and I was making coffee, and he pulls me in and he goes, I want you to read the, you call it the DOR, daily observation report, whatever. DOR. And he's like, hey, will you proof this? And I was like, we're going to, and it said on there, like, stayed up till late last night. And I was like, what time did you guys stay up? I went to bed like at 10 or something.
Yeah.
And he goes, we were up till 2 a.m. talking. And I was like, 2 a.m? Yeah. And he's like, we're just having a heart to heart. And I just kept, that's the level of devotion that a good mentor, and I'd like to believe that in hindsight, this young firefighter will look back as this was a rough start with a rough lieutenant. But I think he'll end up seeing what was actually given to him.
I think he might already.
It might not be the person he wants to model certain aspects after, like his personality necessarily. No. But what he will see from this guy is, I'll never give up on you.
Yeah.
And that's powerful, man. That's a big deal to know that somebody's not ever going to give up on you.
Yeah. So I was brought into that situation, which now that I think about it, I never really considered it, but that was a larger mentorship moment for me, because what that lieutenant wanted was consistency, because he had a lot of time off during the summer, right? And so he said, when I'm not there, I want Chris there. And so I became the de facto fill-in for that engine for the 6 months or whatever, right? So I probably had like a third of the time with that kid. And that was within my first year of being promoted. I was like 4 or 5 months into being promoted. But at the time I had that lieutenant, the assistant chief, and the chief saying, yeah, you know what? That lieutenant's right. If anyone's going to figure it out, it's you two. So go ahead and do what you got to do to make sure this guy is either going to make it or not. And that's an incredible amount of, I initially wanted to say power, but just responsibility to figure out, right? Sure. And I remember we had conversations with you, and it was like, we're going to leave it all on the court, you know, and it killed me to use a basketball phrase that I guess, maybe you're talking about tennis, but we're going to leave it all on the court, you know, like we're going to make sure that if this fails, it's not going to be because of us. Mm-hmm. And through that, and also through just, you're right, man, there's just something in that would just not figure it out. It just wouldn't click. And I think he sees it now, because I think he was overheard talking to a newer guy the other day, and he said like, man, I really screwed up. He was like, I had a really messed up first year. I almost got fired like twice. Yeah. I don't know what was going on, but, and if you talk to him now, it's like you never met him. Of course. You never met him.
He's a bright guy. So glad he passed, because we're a better department for having him. He's a hard worker. He's involved. He's involved. Yeah. He's motivated. He wants to be on special teams and all this other stuff. So he's the kind of person that the department is seeking, because, you know, somebody that wants to do more than that's asked of him, he wants to do more than the minimum requirements. So we ended up in the end not just, you know, discarding somebody that, you know.
Well, that speaks to you said what eventually did happen was I had several hearts with him. So did the first guy. He got moved. He got moved to a different lieutenant, because we looked at it like, we're 0 for 2. This isn't, myself and the other lieutenant have similarities in our management style. We're 0 for 2 and it's not working. Give him to someone else, and seriously hoping it would work. And it did. And so that's a note of point 2 of like, the first person you're paired up with may not be the best mentor for you. You can absorb stuff off them, but you have to realize at a certain point what you jive well with, and he flourished under that next person, you know, which is preferred, dude. It was so preferred.
What do you think too, though, that like now because of that, he didn't just make an impact on that particular firefighter, but he made an impact on me. You know, at the time I had almost 2 decades of fire service experience, and I was literally blown away by something. I was learning something new about, about how you invest in other people.
The stuff we wrote down in his DORs was just, I remember I had you proofread 1 or 2 of them, and you're like, I can't believe we're writing this down, but yeah, you have to submit that.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God.
But, I mean, it changes all of us, right? Like now we're all looking at this guy as, a mentor, so to speak, right? Like he's a mentor to a lot of people, I'm sure. Like, whether he wants to admit it or not, he's mentoring plenty of people, especially you guys as lieutenants that get new firefighters and everything else. You're mentoring them and shaping them, whether you're asking to do it or not,
Oh man, dude, we're almost at an hour.
Are you serious?
Yeah. On here 1 hour, so probably 57 minutes.
Yeah.
Pre-recording stuff.
My swim then.
Nah, don't do that. Or you're welcome. I don't know which one. Oh my God. Well, thanks, man.
Yeah, thank you, man.
This was
cool.
It was
a good one.
I thought it was gonna be like half an hour. We kind of ripped through that one.
Yeah, I feel like every time we do this, it's that's the sun's going down.
Well, can I tell you a dirty secret of mine? That's maybe I told you it's shameful. I want you to succeed with your VP candidacy, right? I want you to be the District 4 VP. Okay. I also want you to fail miserably, so you have more time to come and do podcasts more regularly. I want you to have nothing on your plate besides mowing the grass and hanging out with the girls after school. So you have roughly 6 hours a day to come hang out and talk with me and Kurt and just kind of BS and have a good time.
I appreciate.
So, think about it. It's not too late. Pull the plug. Yeah.
Well, I hesitate saying this on a podcast, but
I can't edit anything. So
well, I've said it in private circles, and might as well just make it public. But I do desperately want to win. Not desperately. I'm not going to do anything, but I mean, I'm not going to stab somebody in the back for it. But I can just be who I am and put it all on the table and say, this is who I am. Elect me or don't elect me. But now we have a date. August 7th, we'll know. It's a close race right now. My numbers show it to be, if it was a congressional election, it's a virtual tie, right? So we'll see who shows up, and we'll see what happens. But I've already basically analyzed two paths: win or lose this election. My life is just going to be drastically different and better, and and not because I don't like the things that I'm doing. It's just there's so many irons in my fire. So whatever path I go down, a lot of those irons are going to be removed, and it's just going to feel so much better. So I'm excited for whatever the future brings, and we'll see what happens. But yeah.
So if you're in District 4 in Illinois, and
show up.
if you want to give the parameters of that, because we have a smattering of people across Illinois. I'd say that's the bulk of the listenership, and then it kind of flares out widely from there. It's pretty awesome. But if you're in District 4, first of all, find out what district you're in. If you're in District 4 AFFI, show up for Joe Galli. Why don't you take the last whatever time you want here, minute, 30 seconds, whatever you want, and do you have a message you want to put out there as your candidacy? You can end this on a high note.
Right now we're in the closing month. A lot of people have made their decisions. There's a handful of places out there that haven't indicated one way or the other, but as I tell everybody at this point, this is me just doing the job for the last 5 years with the previous district vice president. And if the last year is any indicator, if he's basically been working on his move to Florida, I've been doing the work. I have more experience than I ever thought I would get doing this job, going from local to local, handling these issues. Some of them are pretty hard. Some of them are not too bad. But to have the trust from the current DVP, whose last day I think is the 7th, for him to say, "Hey, got this issue, take care of it." Dude, it means a lot. I mean, we're talking about the mentors. He was my mentor for the last 6 years. Just helping me through so many processes with 439, through AFFI stuff. He's the one that asked me to consider running. He's the one that pushed me into that position. And when he saw something in me before I saw something in me, he was giving me more responsibilities. So it really just comes down to I'm so fortunate to have a breadth of experience that I otherwise never would have had he just not pushed me to do more. And thankfully, it just gave me the confidence. I mean, if I'm lucky enough to win, I get to take that baton and just keep that pace, because nothing's different. He's been in Florida for a while. And me, along with another assistant district vice president, have been taking the lion's share of these issues that he presents to us, and we go back and forth on them. He still handles stuff, of course, but like for him to just say, take this and take care of it, go to this local and help them, it's huge. It's huge. So hopefully that's what some of these locals will make their decision on. Unfortunately, that's not what all elections are about. Not just this one, any election, people are going to make their decisions based on the relationships that they have. My opponent's a wonderful human being. He's a good friend of mine. I'm so thankful that this election didn't change that, because it's not about slinging mud or dimming his bulb to make me brighter. I can only tell people what I've done, and the things that I've done have just been the work, straight up. And I'm not going to stand on a pedestal and say, I'm the best person because this guy doesn't do anything. I'm going to say I'm the best person because I've been doing this, and that's all I can say. And if that's what a local wants, then hopefully they'll vote for me. So
I dig it, man. And on personal note, you're a mentor to me, so I appreciate that, and I appreciate you coming in and give me your valuable time, dude. Give everybody your valuable time, because I think people have really seen you as that mentor too. As the handful of times you've been on here, is they notice you and they recognize you, and they hear what you're saying, what you're doing. They can tell the X factor there, and the I can't think of the word now, but the X factor, the intangible that you carry with you in the role and in your leadership role and everything. So,
well, I appreciate that, man. I got to tell you too that I think that when you made that transition on Tailboard Talks to just be all encompassing, and you know what I mean, from that singular fitness focus kind of thing to just all around, it really just kind of like blew my mind how good you are at this platform, and you are empowering a lot of people to get their voice out. So I appreciate you on a whole nother level, man. So
I hope so, man.
Yeah.
All right, dude. Can I buy you more coffee? Huh?
I buy you a coffee.
All right.
Yeah. Buy Chris a coffee, will you? What does it take?